Morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Morning.
You guys. Super. Brad, I don't believe we've met. Are you new to the group?
Hi, Dirk. No, I did attend most of last year's sessions. I just haven't been very vocal.
Okay, all right, great. Good
Yes.
to have your
Yes.
camera on as well. Guys, if we
Sure.
can put our cameras on, does help. Others been talking to blank screens. Nicholas, you've got to be new. I haven't seen you before.
Yeah. I'm very new, so I actually recognize some people from an IWP course, but new to this PLFP group.
Okay, great. Welcome.
Thanks, Dick.
I'm also new today.
I know,
Lovely to
Nikki,
meet
I've
you
seen your
too.
name. Yeah,
Yes,
lovely to
thanks
meet
so
you
much.
too.
And
Where are
thank
you,
you,
Nikki?
Shannon,
How
for
you doing, Nikki?
introducing me. How's it, Shan?
How you doing?
Good, thanks. And you?
All good. Hey,
Excellent.
Dirk.
How's it,
Hey,
guys?
and the feet. All good.
How's the Free State 30? Must be warm.
Yeah, no, terribly warm, like 40 degrees. Sun is burning everything, the plants, the grass. Yeah, quite tough.
Okay, we've had that here as well, but we had a bit of rain last night. So, how's Natal, Shannon?
It's that stupid time of the year where I'm sitting in a puddle of my sweat at my desk. Humid. But aside from that, we're all good.
Yeah, you won the
Brendan?
rugby, eh?
Did we?
Yeah, you beat us.
We just got to do it again next week, I think.
Now, Stormers will be back.
So you're in Cape Town, Dirk?
I'm actually in St. Francis Bay. We have
Okay.
office in P as well. Alex is in the office in P, and Zoe. Yeah. How are you, Brendan?
Hey, how's it, Dirk? Hey, guys.
Get yourself. How's Joburg?
Yeah, okay. Hot, man. We had a bit of rain last night. It was a blessed relief. We've been struggling to sleep the last few days. It's been so hot.
Sure. Okay. How are you, Marguerite?
Good morning. It's good here in Cape Town. Thank you. How's it going there?
Yeah, also nice and stuffy, but all good, yeah. Okay. All right. I think we can start slowly.
Morning, everyone.
How's it?
How you doing? I didn't see you for golf, Dylan.
Very well, thanks. Yeah, the holiday ran away from me, that's for sure. I never even got to go to St. Francis. I'm upset about it.
Okay. Well, everyone else was here. They've all gone home now, so we're quite happy. So, yeah. Okay, guys. So, welcome to everyone who's new. Nice to see so many of you guys here. I thought what we'd start. Morning, Zizwe. I thought what we do is just start the year off on something that I think we've discussed in different ways before, but is really important, and that is challenges that new. And I notice I said young and new lifestyle planners face, because I know that young is relative, and new is also relative if one's come from a background of being a kind of a normal kind of broker where we focus very much on products, to where the lifestyle financial planning is obviously products are not the important part, I suppose, of what we do, but the main focus is around the client. So I think it's really aimed, it's quite broad. I think the discussion is really about the challenges that we face, when we start out in this profession, this business. I've all said many times, and I always will, that I really believe this is, if not the toughest, one of the toughest jobs to make it in, especially when you start from zero, which most of us do. But the long-term rewards can be really good, not only financially but personally as well. But I mean, that we can worry about later. I think the important part is to recognize that it really is tough. And I think the purpose today is just to kind of discuss some of the major challenges that there are, and then perhaps ways that we can kind of navigate them and get better at doing that. I can tell you there's no magic wand. The bottom line is really hard work. That's it. You're going to get lucky once or twice, but without really hard work, making it in this profession is extremely tough. So I thought the first thing we would talk about, which is really where it comes from, regardless of how we charge or how we get paid, is client acquisition and retention. It's like, where do we find clients, and then how do we keep them? All these cliches, which are quite correct. It's much easier to find a new client than to keep an existing one. And I think these two things really do go hand in hand. So I'm going to talk a little bit, but then guys, I'm going to want feedback from all of you, those of you who are new, to express your challenges, and then those of you who maybe have a bit more experience and how you manage to overcome some of those. So there are a lot of these people on LinkedIn and other places who tell us how we should be acquiring clients and running our businesses and everything. And I'm always very wary because the majority of them have never done what we do, and they don't do what we do. So I'm not saying that what they're saying is not worthwhile, but a lot of it is really pie in the sky. Knocks, exactly. Never advanced a real client. So, they talk about having a niche and standing out and all of those things. And obviously those are important. But I think if I can look back on my career, the thing that's really been most important is just to be myself and to be who I am. I think to be successful in this business, you've either got to be a brilliant salesperson, or you've got to really care about what you do, which means that you really do want to try and help people and make a difference in people's lives. Even if though when we start, we're not quite sure how we're going to do that. I think overwhelmingly that sense of wanting to help people, wanting to add value really has to be there. And then just being ourselves, because you can fake who you are for a while. Just meeting some people, yeah. We can fake who you are for a while, but then after, it's impossible to actually keep that up. So I think it's important to, and again, who we are when we start, and as we progress in our career and our knowledge and our experience and just in life, we are going to change. But I think fundamentally who we are is not going to change. So I think the important thing is to understand why you're embarking on this career, and what is it that you want to do, and that it really needs to. I really believe that needs to be a fundamental part of who we are when we start. I think also, comparing ourselves to other advisors. Now, it's really good to have people who can mentor you, and I would really encourage you to reach out. You'll be surprised. There are a lot of people that are very open to helping and giving away information and assisting you. But also be careful when you look at people who are successful or who the industry deems to be successful. And again, this doesn't mean they're bad people. It's just some people are really good at sales, and they get rewarded with different awards, and especially in the first few years of careers, because they've sold a lot of stuff. Now, I'm not saying that's bad, but what I'm saying is just be careful. Remember to be kind of who you are, and that you're not going to be like the guy up the road. If he is perhaps, compared to you, got a bit more of a vibrant personality or better connected, good luck to him. But at the end of the day, he's still going to have to work really hard to build a long-term sustainable business. And I think what's important as well is when you start out is when you are looking to gaining clients, before you go into it, you've got to have. I've always spoken about having a process. Now, we have to have a process in place. I've shared ours with you numerous times. Happy to do that to anyone. But I think it can be really, really simple. And it needs to be around, how do we acquire clients? So what is the onboarding process? What process do we take them through that makes them feel that we're going to care and look after them, that we care about them, that we're going to look after them. And then very simply, how do we review them on an annual basis? So keep it really simple. I don't think, too many people are trying to build these massive processes before they've even acquired a whole lot of clients. The process you have, I think, will continue to evolve and change in business. But I think what you do have to start with is you've got to say to your clients, because you're going to manage expectations, is, right, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is I'm going to try and help you, and this is the process you're going to go through. When you're on board, we're going to do this, this, and this, and then we're going to review on an annual basis. And that needs to be in place. And then you need to make sure that you do actually do that. And by doing that, what you're doing is you're kind of building a brand. You're building a brand of who you are, because that consistency is what clients want. A lot of clients don't know what to expect when they start working with an advisor. Our industry is very good at telling people what to do, which isn't always great. But I think if you do tell people what to do and then you do what you say you're going to do, that is really, really important, because it tells clients and potential clients that we are reliable. So it starts right at the beginning. If you're going to say you're going to phone them at a certain time on a certain day, make sure you phone them on a certain time on a certain day. If there's a problem with a client, before they phone you, phone them and say, we know there's an issue here, but we're working on it. Just things like that. If you're always ahead of the game, I think, that simple client servicing, before we start getting into IT programs and cash flow models and all of that. When I started many years ago, there were no computers, so you literally had a phone book, you had a rate book and a phone book. So the phone was, and it wasn't even a cell phone. So we didn't even have email. So the phone was really how you manage clients' expectation. And now there's so many easier ways to do that, but I think that's really managed. That's really important. So I've spoken a lot about kind of setting up the background, but I haven't spoken about how to actually go and find clients. And look, we've all done that differently. Again, my history was cold calling, the yellow pages. I started Southern Life. It was orphan leads. It was at some point buying leads, these companies that set up appointments for you. I've literally done anything and everything. They've all worked to different degrees. So I don't think there's a right or wrong way of doing this. I think if you're comfortable in what you're doing, that's a problem. You've got to get uncomfortable, guys. It really is. I know it's not nice, no matter how many degrees you've got. Unless you're joining a business where you're kind of coming in as a paraplanner, there's an existing client base that you can work. If you're out there on your own, if you're not uncomfortable, then you need to look at doing that. But now I want to ask guys, any comments on this? Guys or guys or girls, when I say guys, it's universal. People who have started in their businesses, or people who are new, who've tried things that they're battling with. Opening the floor.
Maybe I can make a comment.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah, so I wrote down a few things that you mentioned now, as well as added a couple of my own. But I know since I probably last spoke about this section of financial planning, the acquiring stuff, there's probably been a lot of people that have joined. So those who've been around for a while, forgive me if I repeat myself. But I've worked in 3 different sort of businesses within the 15 years that I've been doing this job, where I started out in corporate, where you're very much responsible for doing your own thing. You are numbers on the board, go and find your family and friends to get as new clients. And then from then I went to a small startup where they provided leads. And then eventually, after having built up a bit of experience, I joined a family practice where, you've got existing clients as your opportunity to work from, to, build your own network or your own business within it. So what I found is, it's not going to really sound helpful to those who are sort of young, like Dirk says, in the industry and looking to build a business, because it's, when we went for training at the corporate company I was at, they try and give you all the framework to get clients. So they talk to you about centers of influence, like going to make relationships with accountants and legal practices and so on, which sounds like a good idea, but to get in front of those people and to ask if they haven't already got existing relationships is really, really difficult. So hence the comments around what's required to motivate people to push on in the beginning is, like Dirk said, I think authenticity is extremely important. So being yourself. There's no replacement for hard work and getting yourself in front of people. And I started out similar to what Dirk said, where we literally picked up phone books because I initially didn't want to approach close family and friends. I don't know how everyone else feels about that, but that's a very awkward starting point. I kind of made noise to them about mentioning it to other people if they needed it, but I didn't want to approach them directly themselves. Ironically, in time, for those who do stick it out, those people eventually end up coming to you. But it's that trust, I think, that they see you've done the hard work and built yourself up before they initially, come back to you, that type of thing. You've got to be patient, because a lot of all the hard work that you put in the beginning doesn't have anything to show for it. It often comes down the line in 6 months, a year, 2 years sometimes. And the tough thing is hanging in there before those things start bearing fruit is extremely difficult. You've got to be passionate, and you've got to be consistent, like Dirk said. I think whether that's approaching people, making people aware of what you do, it's extremely tough. And I think that was one of the first things we actually started out in this group, is to kind of help those who were in a similar position to myself and others at one point, to make sure that they push through in the beginning to stick in this industry, because it, like Dirk said, it is rewarding over time, but often you'll need a little bit of help to keep you there. I know many people want to leave, and often it's after that hard work in the beginning, like breaking point. I think we all know the turnover in the industry. If you can just stick it out, it's easier said than done, because I know there's all sorts of other financial pressures in the meantime while you try and make it. But it's a worthy reward if you do stick it out. And I'm reminded now every single day when we've come back after holiday how important our job is. So those who are passionate and willing to push through that, probably, if you're realistic, anything between 3 to 5 years. Often some people say 1 to 2 years, but I struggle to see how you can build a practice in 2 years that's sustainable without doing incredible things. So I would say you're in for 5 years of hardship before you sort of push on. So yeah, I don't think that's helpful for anyone. There's no sort of magic framework, but those sort of characteristics are the most important. Don't give up before you're really sure that this industry isn't for you, because I think often if you do push through those tough times, it's such an awesome profession to be in.
Thanks, Simon. Yeah, and I think when I look at this group, and I know a lot of you guys, like, we've got all sorts. We've got people who are really social and out there, and then we've got people who are really quiet. I'm picking on the accountants there, but it takes all sorts, because there are people out there for all of us. You must remember the relationships that we have do end up very often getting kind of fairly personal. I have an experience I'll maybe share later with you. 30 years working with a client where it's still tough sometimes. But again, as Simon said, just being ourselves is really, really important, because that's all you got at the end of the day. Mel, you got your hand up.
Good morning, everybody. So I just want to say I'd rather die 1,000 deaths than cold call or pick up the phone and phone anyone. And I remember when I started in the industry, I remember buying, I think it was CDs or something from America on how to cold call. And yeah, so I've never cold called. I don't like to be uncomfortable. And yeah, but I'm just very, very grateful that my business has grown on referrals. And I think just something, I know that the topic of this was for new financial planners, and I just think my learnings from being in the industry for a long time is, I remember in the beginning when I started, I would like literally throw the whole kitchen sink at a new client. And yeah, I mean, our knowledge is our IP, and we shouldn't be doing that. We're professionals. And over the years, I've learned that if you can learn the art of listening to the client first, and letting them talk, instead of like trying to throw your whole kitchen sink and everything else to the client to prove your knowledge or to prove your worth, and to show them that you can add value to them, rather just listen first. And financial planning is very overwhelming for most people. I think even for us who are financial planners. And so I think we just need to be cognizant of the fact that they're coming to you for advice and they don't know where to start. And when you're just overwhelming them with a lot of knowledge or technical knowledge, you're losing them initially. And I mean, I've had one or two of those where I've felt a bit intimidated by the client or a bit, and I felt like I've had to prove my worth to them in the first meeting. So yeah, I just think for those young financial planners coming in is just, you don't need to prove anything to anybody. And secondly is learn the art of listening, and you don't have to solve all their problems in the first meeting. You need to just sit back and go back to the drawing table and sort of go back to them with an action plan. And I also think the third thing that I've also learned is to say no, and because not every client is for you, and to say no and to say I don't know, because we don't know everything. And I think a client values that more than you just making an assumption and trying to answer the client, and you're not sure of yourself. So I've also learned to say, I don't know, I will come back and I'll let you know. Let me first go and do my homework. So yeah, that's just from my side.
Thanks, Mel. Yeah, some important points there. And it's just contradictory. Our knowledge is really, really important. But it's also ultimately long-term. It's not necessarily why clients are going to work with us. They're going to work with us because they trust us and because we can help them. And this world is changing more and more. And I'm not going to get into AI, but you know, there are many resources that as we go through our career, we get connected to and we learn. You know, over my 30-odd years, I know a lot of people who have got the highest knowledge in certain areas, and if I need to tap into them, I can. So I think, you know, being able to say, look, I actually don't know, but I'll find out for you. That is really important. And again, Mal, you're talking about expectations. I agree. Rather under-promise and over-deliver. You know, I think it's so important to say what you're going to do. You know, a lot of people, as Mel said, will throw the book and look at everything. Just start with the basics. You know, clients talking to you, generally there's a bit of a pain point. And yes, proper lifestyle planning is looking at the holistic side, the whole picture. But sometimes we kind of just, especially when you're starting out, you just need to, you know, part of creating trust is helping people get rid of that pain point, that nail in the head. So thanks. Yeah, Zizwe.
Hi guys. Just on my perspective, what I would like to share is, I think what has happened to me in the past year when I was transitioning from being a tied agent into an independent broker was basically the struggle of now building a book from scratch, because also the approach had to change, because previously it was more like looking at products. But now you're looking at actually a client where you want to keep the client for life. And what comes in with that is just the challenge now, because now you're starting from the ground. It's a challenge of making sure that you're balancing the edge to have the income, and also you making sure that you get the process in place. One positive thing that happened to me last year was actually just to implement the process like that I was referring to, wherein you're consistent in the process. And yes, it's a bit of a painful process to actually implement that process, because sometimes you have to let go of those potential clients who you see they really not committed in the process. And that's one of the things that challenges you, because you can see that if the person is not prepared to commit in the process, they're not going to be the clients that you want to keep also in the practice long term. Because if the fundamentals are not there and they're failing to commit their time in the plan that's theirs, then chances are they're not going to commit going forward. So that's been also been a challenge. But the good thing is when you keep that process, then at least there's consistency and you know exactly that the process must always be in place. That's my contribution.
Yeah, thanks, Desiree. Yeah, again, process, guys, no matter how simple it is so important. It allows you to build consistency. It helps you build your own confidence. And if you look at any major business, they have a process in place for whatever they do. So it's really important. So this is also what you touched on. I think, you know, especially when we're new and we're starting out, sometimes you're going to get clients that you kind of know this isn't maybe getting a long-term thing. If you can help them solve a problem and you earn something by helping them do that, there's nothing wrong with that. Okay, it's like anything. It's like when you start playing golf. You know, you're going to lose a lot of balls. I still do, but you know you stick at it and you keep on going. And I mean, I know. You know, I've seen examples where I dealt with clients years ago and something helped them put in place, even though for some reason or not they aren't active clients anymore. Something happens in their lives, and that problem that you helped them solve has actually come to the fore, unfortunately, and caused huge relief for the family. So if you are, no matter what you are doing, if you are doing something where your heart's in the right place and you follow some sort of a process analysis and you help a client put something in place, a product in place. I'm not scared to use the word because there are very important tools in what we do. If that's part of how you are building your career, there's absolutely wrong with that. You must go ahead and do that. Snubble, sorry.
Muted.
Can you hear me now? Oh, hello guys. Um, so I just want to say I see that most of the people in the room they experienced this many years ago. For me, I'm currently there right now because I had just finished my first 12 months as a financial advisor. So everything that is being mentioned right now, it's actually what I'm going through. I had to, during the December holidays, I had to take a look back at my first 12 months and look at everything because, yeah, it wasn't an easy year. And what you learn from training, it is so different when you get to the field. It's like you are hit with the brick. So I'm currently working on that, working on systems because I also realize that you really need systems in place for this career to work for you. So I'm at that place right now. I just wanted to share that and everything that is being said right now. Thank you guys. Thank you for sharing.
It's a pleasure, Snumbo, and you know, feel free to reach out to anyone you're comfortable with in this group. I'm pretty sure they'll all help you with whatever you're asking. Okay, the next thing which we all hate and didn't really exist when I started, and now has become a business on its own, is compliance and regulation. Now there are different views here, but I mean, as I said, when I started, there was nothing. Literally, there was nothing. Eventually, there was a replacement form. If you replaced the policy, you had to fill something in. We thought that was ridiculous, but anyway, but today it's on a whole another level. And as I said, it's become a business. And I know that as a solo advisor or a small business, it's become a huge issue, both just from keeping up to date with what's going on with all these new acts that are coming in, and also just simply the cost. The cost is really a big player in there. So yeah, I would actually like to hear. I mean, we're a small to medium business. We've been doing it all ourselves. That might be changing soon, but it really is. I mean, you almost need someone to do it full time. I think when you've got probably above 3 or 4 financial planners, you almost need someone full time to do that, and it's a huge extra expense apart from all the hassle. But yeah, I'd like to hear from you guys. Some of you who have smaller businesses and then in bigger businesses, and then also those of you who've perhaps transitioned to maybe a network or something else, and how that's worked for you.
Dirk, are you going to leave us on the cliff there with that might be changing soon?
Sorry?
Are you going to leave us on a cliff? It's a cliffhanger. What's happening? You said it might be changing soon.
Well, anything can change in the world today, Dylan. So I'm going to pick on you. You start, because I know you've been all sides of the coin.
Do you mind just repeating the end of the question? I know we're talking about compliance. I was just I think I was still stuck on the cliffhanger, Dirk.
Okay. No, so the big issue thing is some of us are solo advisors or 1 or 2 advisor businesses on our own completely. Some others have joined networks. Some people are tied agents. Some people work in kind of a corporate-y, like established financial planning businesses. So just like comments, especially from people who have been on more than one side of that fence, and if it was a reason why they made a change or what the differences are.
I'm actually curious if anyone here today has been to the NMG breakfast that they host and has done the interviews. I think it's actually usually just in Joburg and Cape Town. Has anyone done it before? I should actually send you all the reports. Very interesting. So they're a consulting firm. You might be familiar with them. And what they do is they interview over 200 advisors in South Africa and gather a lot of data. And they make a boatload of money because they sell that data to insurers and to investment houses, getting real and raw feedback around their service levels, their portals, their products, pretty much everything about them. So you get exposed to a lot of data around and various topics, including data around the UK and how advisors operate in the UK as well, and how we are tracking behind UK advisors around 5 or 10 years behind them. But why I brought this up is because they have data on this exact topic, Dirk, and it is showing that advisors are moving into networks. Networks are aggressively buying books as well, particularly invest books at very high multiples. And it's mainly because a lot of older advisors say they want succession, but I think they want money more, and they end up moving into networks. And I think it's because of the compliance burden that they're facing. I think to a point you could look at having things templatized, getting systems, getting it automated, but then what types of risks are you exposing yourself to relying on, let's say, AI to help you with your compliance? So I think from our side, we're still using templates to protect ourselves and then kind of customizing them per client. But yeah, I think the trend is that advisors are moving to networks.
Okay, thanks, Dylan. Anybody else? Brendan, perhaps you? I think you've been on 2 sides of that fence. I'm not sure.
Yeah, Dirk, I've been fortunate in that we've always had someone. I've been in businesses that have been big enough that we've always had someone who's focused on operations and practice and compliance, and usually working with an external compliance officer. I do think that it is essential. It's essential to have someone in the business who's focused on developments, on changes, on changing regulations. And I think it's also important that you have someone who's regularly reviewing and almost auditing client files and making sure that the compliance as a whole is up to scratch, because these days the penalties and the sanctions that are being handed out by the regulators when you fall foul of something like FICA, or if something's not in line or if something hasn't been done correctly, it can be disastrous, especially for small businesses. So I think, yeah, I mean, if you're fortunate enough to be able to have someone in your business who is fully focused on operations practice and compliance, I mean, that's great. But if you're a one-man show, I think that you need to give time and energy to it. And again, we've spoken a lot about process today, but it's, process is often written in pencil. It's not written in pen, and it needs to change and evolve as the times change and as we, as our regulatory environment changes. So yeah, I hope, yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely value to, and also value just engaging with people outside of your own business and just finding out what they're doing and how they are handling certain things, and just relying upon people, perhaps in groups like this or in other gatherings where you can draw from their experience. That was how I was raised, or how I grew up when I was doing my articles for accounting. My boss, once a month, he used to go to a gathering similar to this of experienced accountants, and he would come back with pages of notes, and we would literally spend an hour the next day just working through everything that he'd learned in the session from other practices. And in doing that, we evolved our own processes and we evolved how we did things. So I think, yeah, try and learn and leverage from other people's experience as much as you can.
Yeah, thanks, Brendan. I think it's important again and I think this is where, as a Kofi that's coming in, you've almost got to embed the compliance process into your actual process itself. Is what we should be doing. And I think, although it sounds scary, I think this is going to be far better for us, but still it is something we need to be aware of. Okay, Nicholas, you've got your hand up.
Hi, Dirk. Yeah, thanks. Brendan will know this too well because I actually reached out to him. So if you want to know, if you reach out to someone, they're going to help. Brendan gave me, I think, 2 Fridays, an hour each of his time. So that was great. So context, but I've been both sides of the coin. So I was a tight advisor for about 4 years, and about a year ago, stepped into a network. And I think my biggest struggle with compliance is that the subject is always changing. So at Old Mutual, when I was tied, it was more manageable because the one factor Old Mutual side's compliance fairly much changed. I could track it because I was tied to them. And the client's differences, I could just amend to kind of make sure that client is compliant with what I need. But now that I'm independent, I was, and still am, very overwhelmed by the fact that now it's no longer just clients and Old Mutual, it's clients and a whole basket of possibilities. And trying to match that process to the client almost seems impossible to me because there's just too many variables. So I think the only way I've sort of mapped it out to say it is set limitations for myself and disclose those to the client, because I saw another consultant yesterday and they've got a different process. So it's very difficult to standardize it for myself when every provider, every solution has their own process that they need to meet. So that's kind of one of the big challenges I'm facing at the moment, going to the independent space from the tied space.
Okay, and the people that you tied with now, I'm assuming it's efficient wealth because I can see the sound behind you.
Okay,
do they not take care of that for you?
They do to a certain extent, but maybe it's a personal issue. they also catering for larger force advisors. Now it's a very blanket approach where I think they do spot checks that help give you a little bit of peace of mind, but I don't think it's enough to make me feel secure in that compliance process. But I could be off. I've only experienced one network, so I'm not sure how vigorous the compliance should be, to the point where I actually want to know, is there a way you can speak to an umbut where you can kind of get them to review a file of yours, someone who's actually going to be scrutinizing your process. That would be great as well to get that insight, because a lot of the times I don't know what they're looking at besides the F&A, and if so, how, so many variables involved, what is worth putting on that and not, because that's quite overwhelming. It's to say, right, there's so many variables for the client, there's so many variables in the solutions. How can I distill that so that it makes sense to me, and then B, makes sense to the client? And it's not just for the sake of, okay, I've covered myself, I've disclosed everything in this 25-page document you probably won't read. So that for me is the biggest struggle, because the key thing is making sure, for me at least, is making sure the client's in a position to make an informed decision. But on the regulatory side, we have to disclose everything, all the discrepancies between the different options they've got. And it's a big challenge for me.
Yeah, no, I get that. I get that. Yeah, just if I was you, I would actually, if you're part of a network, regardless of which one it is, I would reach out to that network, because I mean, in my view, they should be assisting you with that. To me, that's one of the biggest pluses they should add. If they're not doing that, I think the problem's not so much with you, but maybe with that network. And I'm just speaking because there are different networks. Marguerite.
Would help if I could find the unmute button. So I've been on both sides of the fence in terms of having been my own compliance officer as a one-person business for quite a long time. And that was right from the beginning of the introduction of phase and the compliance processes and submitting compliance reports. So what I did in the beginning was to make sure that my processes embedded the whole compliance expectation. And I think that gave me a sense of peace of mind, knowing that I was working in a way that put the client first and that my heart was in the right place. But at the same time, I think there was always this underlying concern: what am I missing? What am I overlooking? And as a single KI, the buck stops with you. And even in a bigger business, if you're the key individual of that business, even if you have an external compliance officer, the buck stops with the key individual. So I think one of the things that we need to be aware of is that ignorance of the law is not an excuse. And even if you have an external compliance officer giving you guidance, we still need to know what the law says and how to apply that in practice. And I think part of the complexity we're facing at the moment is everything is in flux. We've got these new pieces of legislation being phased in, and we've been told things will change, but right now people still don't know exactly how it's going to change and what it's going to look like in practice. So we're all muddling along and trying to do the best we can with the information we have at hand. And I think if we've become used to approaching compliance as a tick box exercise, in terms of filling in compliance forms, and now we're in this interim space where we're not submitting compliance reports, and we're not quite sure how the next phase is going to look like. I think it is difficult to know how exactly to set up our businesses, but I believe that if it's in alignment with putting the customer first, with putting the client's interests at the center of your processes, that will go a very long way in supporting any argument that you need to put towards the regulator to show that you have been aiming to work in a compliant way. But it can take up a lot of headspace. So I'm now in a practice where we've got an external compliance officer. We've got meetings with them from time to time, where they go through our processes, where they audit client files, etc., etc. And I still hold questions as to how foolproof that system is. But yeah, it remains a challenge and a struggle.
Yeah, Marguerite, I think that's really important. What you said is you got to remember the buck stops with you, especially if you're a carry-on. I am, and I tell you, I still wake up at 2 o'clock in the morning sometimes in a cold sweat because you're just not sure if something has happened. And I think it's natural, especially we've had in this group, we've had a member of this group who has been targeted, and I probably use that word at the FSCA, by the FSCA for an audit. And then again, I probably shouldn't use that word, but we know there are many unscrupulous businesses out there. And when they're picking on small practices who are really doing good work, it's just because of certain things that aren't in place. It seems wrong. And I know that scares us. And I think that one of the problems we have is we don't see the FSCA as an ally, as a friend. We see them as the enemy, which I think, and I know the FBI have done quite a bit of work to turn that around. They're really good people. So hopefully that continues. Shannon, you got your hand up.
Thanks, Dirk. Yeah, I'm a one-man practice, and this compliance thing is a real thorn in my side. And it's where so often the focus on compliance is just in the wrong area. So similarly to Margriet, I just focus on putting the client first, doing the very, very best I can do for clients. And a lot of, I work with an external compliance, I work with Masthead, and I try and use them to give me guidance as what needs to be done from a tick box perspective. But my focus is on just doing the best for my clients, and then just going with the risk that, if something happens and I get an audit, hopefully I'll have enough in place to get done. But it's ludicrous. I look at my FICA RMCP document that I had to compile. It's 110 pages long for a one-man practice. The only time I've ever looked at it is when I compiled it. I'm never going to look at the document again unless my compliance officer tells me to add something to it. And it's just stuff like that. That is the amount of time that you spend doing stuff like that that's taking you away from what we actually there to be doing. And that is just to be looking after our clients. And it's a bit of a crazy thing for me. And that's why a lot of it I just turn a blind eye to, and fingers crossed, hope for the best. And it might not be the right approach, but that's just how I handle it.
Yeah, Shannon, I share your frustration. And I think this is where, again, we need to think about how serious we are about what we do. And there's always going to be things we don't like, and I certainly don't like it. But the fact of life is we have to do it properly, because if we do get caught, and we've heard, again, from one of the group that audits can put you out of business for a month or two with all the work that you need to do. And yeah, I'm guilty of saying, there are a lot of baddies out there that get away scot-free. But I think our focus actually probably needs to be around, if we want to be world-class financial planners, lifestyle financial planners, we need to look and see what those guys and girls are doing and try and be more like them. But I mean, I absolutely share that frustration. Simon.
Yeah, I also share all these frustrations, and I won't dwell on it because I think, like everyone said, to be hyper negative doesn't really change anything. So I won't share too much. But the one example I can give is I had someone who I initially spoke to about a year or two ago, and it was a very general conversation. They were quite young and very on the ball, very, very smart person. Who was trying to do, their own thing. They eventually came to the conclusion that, they didn't want to do their financial planning on their own. They couldn't do it, and they would appreciate some professional help. So even though they'd had what sparked her meeting was someone in her network was at Citadel, so no bashing to anyone who's there, because as you'll listen, it's not actually bashing them at all. But anyway, the conversation that came up, she met this person and went to a presentation from them, and the presentation led to a meeting. And she reached out to me to say, look, do you mind if I run something by you? I know we've chatted before. If you can't, it's not a problem. I don't want to, waste your time or anything, but I through her sister, who's a client, she said, I do trust your opinion. I'd like to just have a chat with something. On the meeting, she shared the call it the proposal from Citadel. I could be wrong, but I think it was in the region of about 60 pages, if not longer. And obviously, from a compliance point of view, the level of sort of it was so comprehensive that it had everything you needed. And she was reaching out to me to say, like, what on earth is this? First of all, it doesn't make any sense. It's overcomplicated. I don't even want to go through it. It's put me off entirely. And I thought to myself, what is it achieving by, ticking all the compliance boxes? But in layman's terms, a very smart young person has no idea what's been put forward to them. So I just thought, look, it won't help by saying this here, but my opinion on what I think the FSCA should try and do is help all of us by saying, I realize every practice is completely different, from small to really big. Some are more straightforward and some complex. But if you're looking for a framework, what I would like to see them doing is reaching out to all the providers, if it's your CRMs or financial planning tools or whatever it is, and spend the money building in the correct systems. I know, for example, even on our CRM, they do have sort of a from start to finish compliant approach. But then, like, you go and hear these stories, you could nitpick that across, and it also doesn't deem it compliant. And I think that's where the frustration lies. I think all of us wouldn't be on this group if we weren't passionate and weren't trying to do the right thing. But then you do the right thing, and then you're told that actually it's not worth the paper that it's printed on. So instead of the FSCA maybe focusing heavily on audits, those are obviously necessary. I get that. But they should. I feel like they should be putting in. They just concentrate their effort in areas where, for example, reaching out to CRMs has such a broad reach that if they spend their time there, you are helping the majority of the advisor market to be compliant. So I don't know how everyone else feels about it, but it's always a really difficult subject for me because at heart, I want to be as compliant as one needs to be and can be. And then only to find out, like, oh, this is great and all, but it's actually not really right. You know what I mean? So I don't know. Anyway, that's my 2 cents. But I mean, you fear us. I hear Dirks. We do the best we can. I still also same. Sit up at night thinking to myself, that still probably wouldn't pass the test. Yet it's so comprehensive. The client is happy. They fully understand. And then you're told it's not good enough. So it's so difficult to engage with the right people. I think, like a small practice, they can't go and interview every advisor practice. But I mean, I would like them to maybe listen to. I think Dylan mentioned the research survey. Hopefully, they are already doing this by getting the feedback and saying, okay, well, we want everyone to be compliant. So how can we actually help them do it? Yeah, it's very, very difficult.
Okay, I've actually got that because I take part in that research survey every year. So I'll actually share it on the WhatsApp group. Yeah, some of it is. It's really frustrating. Again, it's one of these things that it's just something we have to get past, as much as we dislike it, or even as we deem it to be unfair, and just hope that Kofi's going to make it better. And I do believe that it will. Okay, sorry, Matthew, you got your hand up. I mean Barry, sorry.
I'm good. I'll respond to both of them. Thanks, Dirk. I just want to pick up on Shannon's comments. I put something in the chat, specifically on where the regs are going and one-man bands. Because the way that I see it, it looks to me like the FSCA are actively working to get one-man bands out. I mean, the level of reporting that's going to be required of us this year, I don't know if you've had a look at the Omni Risk Report that's required from the third quarter. I pulled it into, I've been in a couple of sessions on it, and I pulled it into one of the GPTs and asked for a summary of it. It's fairly frightening. the level of information that the FSCA is looking at. And that's Q3 this year. And that's before Kofi comes along, and you need to essentially relicense in Kofi. So you're grumpy about the last report that you did, Shannon. Yeah, there are a couple more coming your way. So I do see it as sort of an active effort to get the one-man bands out of the system. So it does look like they're looking to corporatize the advice space. And I've been trying to think through why that might be. The one obvious item is succession planning that they've been hammering on for a while, and there are probably various others. But you know, in a one-man band, and we see this because I mean, part of our business model is looking to be the succession plan for advisors. We have a number of sole props, especially the older guys, and the reality is the sole prop is the KI, and they are the FSP. And when they die, because it's in themselves, you know, they are the FSP. When they die, that FSP's gone. So in terms of taking over the clients in that sort of situation or supporting their being succession plan, you know, you add in Poppy into the space and who can share information on clients, and it really becomes a tough environment. So one, I think they want everybody as a company in some right, and then they want various different advisors linked together. Seems to be what they're focusing on. Thanks, Dirk.
Yeah, thanks, Barry. Yeah, I don't know if it's because I don't know if there's a reason, if there is a reason, or if it's they worked out it's simply easier to target smaller businesses because they know that your corporatized businesses will generally have most of the stuff sorted. So I don't know that they know enough about what we do to actually have a bigger view of where the whole industry or profession should be going. I think it's probably it's like the hit rate. You know, how do they? Because they've got KRs that they have to report back on as well. So yeah, and then I think you know what this does do is it does raise a question around as a solo advisor and do you know about joining a network or another FSP that you know that takes a lot or most of this burden away from you. And then an offshoot of that is a lot of people say, well, you know, if you're a tired advisor, you can't give proper advice and you're not impartial. I think that's absolute bullshit. I think who you serve on the product side, all the products are more or less the same. There really is very little where someone is. There are very few cases where someone's got something that is completely unique. And if you're looking at in the fund management space, and if that's what you're looking at, then I think you've got a problem in the first place. But I think good advice comes down to the person, to the individual. That's where it starts and ends. I think if you have your client's best interest at heart, you're going to do what's right. Whether you have a contract with Old Mutual or Sanlam or Liberty, or because people say I'm independent, and very often they've got two contracts. They've got a good with an Old Mutual and an Grey, you know, or an Investec or a Coronation or something. So you know what does independent actually mean? And I'm not saying for a moment that it doesn't make things easier, because it does. Because in some cases, you know, if a client has a complete aversion to a life company and they love Allan Gray because those brands are really easy to sell because they don't have a legacy and they are great companies, an Allan Gray, a Coronation, Investec. You know, if the client's more comfortable with that branding, then obviously you go the way of least resistance, unless you know it's not in their best interest. But okay, let's get back on track. And who is there?
Dirk, sorry, can I just
Yes.
pick up on the one comment that you made around the FSCA targeting the smaller guys? And I think I look at this Omni Risk report, and there are a number of advisors that we're chatting to. So it's been around for a while. was called Omni CBR, and now it comes in. So it has to be reported third quarter. You don't know about it, or you're not technically competent to be able to submit the report, because it's not a small baby. And bless them, they're using Microsoft Forms. So as you are uploading your data, if you lose your focus and Microsoft Forms logs you out, then nothing's saved for you. So you need to go back and do it again. So it's not a great user experience, shall we say? But from a targeting point of view, if you don't submit, the FSCA have got a list of all of the advisors that are registered, and then they've got a list of all the people that have submitted. They don't even have to look at what was submitted. They just have to look at the guys who didn't submit. And that raises a bunch of questions. So, well, maybe that's the group that we need to go and target. So I think you might be right there around targeting the smaller guys.
Yeah. Okay. June, you got your hand up?
Yes, thanks, Dirk. Yeah, good morning, everyone. So I'm just curious, a lot of times when we assist planners, and it's different for, let's say, independents and when we deal with corporates, because when you look at the advice process, I think it's very simple for a client. They want to know where they are, they want to know the recommendations that you guys give them, and then this is the overall change to their plan. So we try to simplify it, let's say, in a financial plan, but compliance remains an issue. So with a lot of the corporates, they include the compliance within the financial plan, which makes it a 20 or a 30-page document. So I was just wondering, so I've got my own personal view, but I was wondering how you would include your compliance within the plan, or like a separate addendum, and how does that impact your client experience? I'm just curious, Dirk. I would just like to see how different people do it.
Yeah, June, look, I think you can, and I know the system you're talking about, it can include a lot of that. The reality is most clients want 1 or 2 pages. That's all they want. They just want to know, here's the problem. Okay, shit, I thought I was fine there. I'm not. How do I fix it? That is what it is. I mean, over and above that, there is the whole lifestyle, which is really, really important. But without that first fundamental thing, that's kind of, at the end of the day, if you strip everything else away, the clients just want to know. And so what I'm saying is, yeah, I mean, you are right, but I know very few clients that would read a 10-page document, let alone a 30 or 70-page document. So it is a problem. So it's an addendum. I know a lot of my mates in the UK where they've got kind of consumer duty now, which is even more onerous than this, which is where we're going to end up. They will actually have 2 plans. They will have the plan that the client reads and the plan the client has to sign, that 99.9% don't read, but it covers their butts on the compliance side. So it's unfortunate. I think what we've got to do is look, what if these people who don't know what we do, that are implementing all these rules, what are they wanting us to do? And basically, what are they wanting us to do is what's best for every single client. So again, if we keep that foremost in our minds, then I think that is really, really, that's the most important thing. But look, we're all going to present things differently to clients. And again, different clients are different. We all have those clients. You sit down and we've got to fill in this compliance form, and they just switch off. They just absolutely, because I'm one of those. If I was a client and you put, like if you go buy a car or property and they put this bond stock instead, is anyone bought a property lately and been to conveyancer? You fill out, especially if you've got a company or a trust, paperwork like this in that 2 days, because you get cramp, you run out of ink in the pen. I mean, it's absolutely ridiculous. So if we think we have it bad, I think other industries, I think the only profession that gets away with this is medicine. Because doctors, you just sign your life away, and if they take out the wrong organ, you pay them for the second time as well. They don't give you a refund or your organ back. But I think most other professions, and that's the unfortunate part, because next to financial planning, I think healthcare is probably the second most important profession. But I think, we don't have it easy, but nor do the other professions. Okay, I think let's move on. I think the other things just want to touch on is tech. Again, we're speaking about new advisors, particularly what are the problems? The problems with finance is paying for all these things. If you're a CFP, I've spoke to them, so if Lolani's listening, good on you, listen to me again. I think it's really unfair that there aren't different rates for young advisors, because to be paying 8,000-9,000 Rand a year to keep your accreditation, when everyone knows that new advisors really battle just to put food on the table. I think they could do a little bit better there. But that's my punt there. But I think also tech is a big part of what we do, and I think I've seen a lot of newer younger advisors that get all the tech. They got this tech stack and they got this, and yeah, it can help, and yeah, it's important. But I promise you, at the end of the day, it's not what clients want. It really is not what clients want. Whether you're contacting, if you're contacting clients on WhatsApp and you keep them up to date and you're doing what you say you're going to do, I think that is really important. I mean, those of us who've been around a bit longer, how many emails do you get every day? And you delete them, you unsubscribe, but they keep on coming. How many calls do you get from all these people trying to sell you stuff? There's just so much communication that happens on a daily basis. That we just simply we've just got immune to, we've just got used to. So tech is really important from the point of view that, like, I'd say the most important thing you need is a cash flow planning tool that works. I don't know how you can do, if you're just focusing on risk, fine. Even then, you need some tools. But getting into fancy CRMs and all that, if you've got a diary and you using the stuff that the Microsoft give you, I think you can do pretty well there. But I think be careful before you jump into getting all kinds of tech that's costing you money. And again, speak to different people on this group. I think we all use probably every tech that is available in SA and more. And there's a lot of stuff there that you can try that is fairly free as well. But I say probably the most important next to cash flow planning tool right now is if you can find the kind of the AI, the meeting things that like we use. Saturn, really good. It's simply because it just saves you a lot of work. It records transcripts, perhaps you create minutes and things like that. That has probably jumped ahead of a lot of the other stuff that was important perhaps a couple of years ago. Any comments on tech, guys, before we move on?
Maybe going back to your previous comment around the price, I think the 8,000 or 9,000 would be worth it if the public knew what it meant. That's my rant for the day. Tech, as you say, it is important, and I'm just more curious to see how all these tech providers are going to build AI into their systems responsibly. It's going to be very interesting, particularly into CRM type systems. I think a lot of the providers are very comfortable with the archaic systems that people don't really want to look at anymore. Don't want to take shots at anyone, but I remember reading my first at work FNA as a young person, and I almost fell asleep. And that's someone who is actually interested in financial planning, never mind trying to explain it to a client. So yeah, I think interfaces are going to become very important going forward as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think, we're all looking for integration, and I think the reality is we're going to wait forever. I've waited a long time, and it's never going to be perfect. So I think you've got to kind of choose tools that you're comfortable, that work well for you. Be wary of having too many. Again, it's that client expectation. If you started using Asset Map and it works well for certain clients, then you're going to use Asset Map. It's not that expensive, but then but I think also be careful. You don't want to start something and then not being able to use it again later on. So yeah. Okay, when it comes to things, okay, these are less important, but practice management, I think we've discussed a lot of that. Succession, it is really important, but I think when you're new and young, don't stress about that too much, really. The first thing is to build a business. The same thing with staff. Yeah, I think a big thing is just employing new staff isn't necessarily going to help. It's always an extra expense. The more staff you have, sometimes the more problems you have because you're managing different personalities and things. So I think, just, hiring staff can be of huge benefit, but don't always think that it's just going to solve a problem. We worked with Brett Davidson for years, and it's one thing that comes through really strong from his side is that often people think just, hiring another advisor or hiring another admin person is going to solve something. It's not always the case. And then I think also just trying to follow the numbers when we're talking practice management is profitability. Everyone, when you ask someone, are you in the business, so what's your AUM? That's kind of a gauge of how big or how successful the business is. But at the end of the day, AUM doesn't always speak to fees that are being charged, and it certainly doesn't talk to profitability. So I think when you're starting out, knowing whether you're profitable or not is really important. The danger a lot of us run when we run own businesses is that we run our personal lives through the business because it makes sense tax-wise, and a lot of it is really intertwined. So it's completely normal and understandable. But at some point, you also need to understand whether you are actually, being profitable or not, and then what levers you could pull to change that. And then one thing I think is really important, 20 minutes left, is I think, especially again, going back to new advisors, young advisors, is the investment strategy that you adopt within your business. Again, going back to where I started, when I started, there were probably maybe 12 unit trusts. Okay, they were all in the newspaper every day. You could see what their prices were. Now they're probably, if we're looking, there's more than 12,000 if we're looking worldwide. So it's become an absolute minefield. I know we get contacted almost daily by asset managers wanting to present to us, and I'm sure many of you guys, and although you can take it as a compliment, take a rain check on that, because they're obviously looking, they see you as a distribution channel, which is absolutely fine. It's normal. It's how it happens. We do the hard work. They make all the money. I've got lots of friends who are asset managers, but they don't deny that that's the truth. But I think what's important is that you really keep your investment philosophy simple. I'm thank goodness, have 25 years ago, just was fortunately exposed to a group where the process was using inflation plus targets that spoke into a cash flow model. And that really has been probably the single biggest reason for the business being fairly successful, is that there was one constant message. It was, why do we invest not in the bank? Well, we need to outperform inflation. So based on your individual setup, you need to target inflation plus 4, 5, 6, or 7, whatever it is, before going into retirement. And if we're able to do that, then the plan is going to work. I still stand by that. I think it makes a hell of a lot of sense. The only thing I would look at a lot more now is also with reading all of Nick Murray's stuff and listening to other advisors for instance, in the UK, even in the US, and guys like Buffett, and that there are very few active managers that actually consistently outperform the index. So, and it's quite simple. It's 95% of active managers have underperformed the S&P 500 over the last 20 years. So that's a fact. That's not an opinion. You can research that. And it's really unsexy. Those funds are generally a lot cheaper. You can buy the Vanguard S&P 500 offshore at 0.1%. We know asset management fees are coming down, but it's very difficult to argue against that sale. But again, a lot of people say you're buying into a passive fund now, where there's such an imbalance with the Magnificent Seven. I mean, I can understand part of that, but the reality is no one knows. So what's important though is that you formulate an investment strategy that you honestly believe in, whether it's passives, whether it's inflation plus, whether it's some sort of a hybrid of all of that. I think it's really important. And I would honestly steer away from managers who are going to shoot the lights out. Stay away from rock stars. They all take drugs at some point. They're going to crash. Rather, and because if you're dealing with a client, other client, the other firm, she's been doing what I know about hedge funds. She met some oaky, spoke about hedge funds, and I won't mention the guys. And you hear all the good stuff, but she wasn't told that their TR was, I think, 10.5% over the last period, and they've still performed over certain periods. But if you are setting, if you're setting that kind of a product, then I think you're in real danger, because the client's not buying you; they're buying into a fund. And if you're doing that, you're always going to get caught out, because there's always going to be a fund that over some period will outperform. So I think it's really important is that you stick to an investment strategy that you believe in. So when people speak to you, you can just repeat it, and that it absolutely makes sense. And for me, inflation plus targeting, talking back to finance, and that strategy, that investment strategy, has to speak to a client's plan. The client's plan comes first, and then the investment strategy is one of the things that helps implement that plan. So I just think that is really, really important. Any comments from anyone who's been on both sides of the fence as I have? Nicholas.
Sure, I'll jump into it because it's quite topical for me. Because when I joined the industry, they tied me to another well-established advisor, and it was quite interesting to see when the fund selection became the focus, or the performance became the focus. That's where the value derived from for the advisor. So, it was quite interesting to see during different market conditions how the appointments varied. And I'm just speaking to your point there, where if you stick into a strategy, irrelevant of what's happening in the market conditions, the strategy should speak to what's currently happening, as it's a natural part of the economy and the fluctuation. But it was interesting to see how that fund, the role of your financial planner role, it could quickly become a fund picker, or, very quickly if you don't establish your sort of house view quite early on. Because I obviously got in that loop where, every week you would read different articles about different funds performing well, you do your research, you begin to understand it, and you can always validate it because you're looking for a reason to validate why you want to implement it. And very quickly it became difficult to manage your practice, because now you've got 100 different funds with your client base, and if there's changes that are made, fund manager changes, how do you keep track of those sort of variables? So I wish I learned earlier, but it made a huge difference in my world when I sort of stuck with a strategy and implement it. And one thing that's sort of thrown a curveball recently for me is DFMs. That's sort of thrown a spanner in my works in terms of, okay, right, is there value for them pre-retirement? Is there value more post-retirement? Because there's a bit more benefit, at least in my opinion. So that's sort of my 2 cents on the topic. Not that I have much to offer.
No, Nicholas, I think that's very valuable. A lot of us all feel that way, and we've experienced that. And your comment on DFMs, I agree with you completely. You know, effectively, the team I've dealt with for 25 years are a DFM, you know, but there are a lot of businesses that have just taken up that label. They've taken a fund, they've rebranded it, and it's a sales job, okay? And I think that's what makes our job so difficult, because everyone's got this different angle, you know, and you know, it's a marketing job. I mean, like, this is where, and they are great companies, but where Coro and Gray are so good at what they do. They got the best adverts on TV. I mean, everyone starts crying when you see the elephants or the little, like, you know, his grandfather's taking money and put it in a jar or whatever. I mean, they're really great ads, and they speak to real value. And again, they're great businesses. So it's probably sometimes easier sticking with a big brand that your clients know, and that also have got a history of generally performing well. A lot of those funds aren't necessarily cheaper, by the way, but a lot of them have performed consistently. And I think you've got to be aware of some of these newer DFMs, that you've got to look at where did they start? Like, you know, where do they come from? Like, kind of just do a little bit of research, and you will see that a lot of them started somewhere else and kind of changed tack, because DFM's like the new thing, you know, like now everyone's a lifestyle planner, you know, and the reality is the public know what a financial advisor is, you know, which we called ourselves 20 years ago. Shannon, you got your hand up.
Yeah, Dirk, just two things. I cannot see the value of DFMs in the environment where we pick a strategy and we implement a strategy. They come at us and they tell us, yeah, bulk switching and all that. We don't switch. You know, these are the funds we use, and we apply the strategy and let it go. And performance reporting and all that, again, we don't even really do performance reporting. What clients want to know is, am I going to be okay? Plug it in the cash flow, run the numbers, am I going to be okay? My clients aren't interested in how the funds are performing or not performing, because they have the long-term view. So that's where I just don't align with DFMs. So that was just one thing that I wanted to comment on. Something that I do want to comment on, you touched on succession planning. And that's something that I, as a one-man practice, am battling with a bit. I've built a practice over 27 odd years, and I'm very comfortable in my practice. It pays me a good living. I live a good lifestyle. But in terms of my planning, I've never really planned it to be able to employ a new planner to take over from me. And I don't know if there are other guys that are in a similar space to me that have the struggle, because for me to bring in somebody new and pay them a salary, that's going to impact on me and my earnings. And it's something that I've never really planned for, and I'm now having to start to think about that. So I don't know, you know, what other people have done with regards to that. It's almost just at a point in my life where, you know, I'm just going to run my practice forever. I don't work too hard at it. It's easy, it's simple, and then, you know, phase out of it over time. That's kind of my thoughts.
Yeah, look, Shannon, I think that's a whole separate discussion on its own. Very important one. Yeah, I mean, there are options, there are different options out there in how you do it. You know, the one is plan succession, and the other one is, you know, you get eaten by a shark on your surf tomorrow morning. You know, what do you do there? And the concerns are, let's face it, on your family and your clients. Those are the only two real concerns. Is your clients, what continuity is there for them? And your family, how do they get value from your 27 years of hard work?
So, you know, in terms of family, that's kind of taken care of in terms of whatever things I've got in place there. I'm not looking to unlock value on the business there. The concern is more for the clients. But even with the clients, I turn around to them and say, guys, go out there, look for an advisor with a CFP and deal with it. And really nothing should change. This is the strategy. This is how we've applied, and it should just be a continuation of that. So that's why, again, I'm not too concerned about the succession. That's how I view it, and that's how I've educated my clients to view it.
Yeah, look, I think there's no judgment because we all do, you know, what we believe is correct. The only thing I would perhaps consider is tell even the family that if there was an advisor that you knew that worked to a similar way that you do, to say, well, look, if I do get eaten, speak to Mary or speak to Joe, and that. But I do find I'm 58 this year. I am finding there are more and more clients who are saying, well, like, what happens if something happens with you? And we do have a team. So it's easier because we do still have a team. But yeah, I mean, the difficulty I think we all have is that very much if you're running a small business, you become the business. And the challenge is to make that not the case. But again, I mean, that's a separate discussion we can have. But yeah, I think most of us are, most people in the group are not there yet. But yeah, thanks, Sharon. Anyone else have anything to comment on that?
Dirk,
Yes.
sorry. Am I allowed to put an offer out there to this team? I'm looking for a paraplanner in Durban, if anybody knows. But I'm wanting somebody who's a CFP and it's a salary base plus incentives. So if you don't mind that I'm using your forum to put that out there.
Not a problem at all. You can ask in the WhatsApp group as well.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, and then just the
Thanks.
final, no problem. The final few thoughts is, yeah, this business can be really, really lonely. I mean, if you're fortunate enough to work with a team, that makes it easy. But you know, there are teams and there are teams. I think if you're part of a network, it can still really be a lonely business. Because when the lights go out, you are on your own. You know, when you have to do that hard work, you're the one who has to do it. If you're a client-facing advisor. And I think that's what this group is for. And I know there are other groups as well. But all I would encourage you to do is to reach out to people. There are a lot of people who are prepared to kind of be a sounding board or mentors or whatever you want to call it. Doesn't really matter. But I think, you know, just they you know, we are always told how many sharks there are in this business, and there are many. But I can tell you there are many, many people who are very passionate and absolutely love what we do. So, you know, please feel out to reach to people and even on this group as well. Also, I think I mentioned, don't focus on what your competition's doing. There's not competition. We have groups like this because we don't see each other's competition. Many of us work in the same areas. You know, at the end of the day, there are more than enough clients out there who need help. So rather learn from each other. Also, don't try and copy each other. You know, we're all different. So learn. There's maybe things that other people do that you could try everything. You know, don't stop trying. Try absolutely everything. If it doesn't work, you just try something else. Yeah, managing personal finances when you start out is really important. You know, when you have those great months, it's very difficult not to want to reward yourself. But like we're helping other people manage their money, make sure we are able to do the same ourselves as well. Delayed gratification is the name of this game, both through the hard work that we put in, so that's effort, and then also in the finance as well. I can tell you, and many others will tell you that you may look at established businesses and say, well, oh, it's so easy for them. But I can tell you 9 times out of 10, it's taken years and years of really hard work, perseverance, and bumping your head to get there. And if you do that, you really will work. So this isn't a negative comment, but work-life balance, it doesn't exist. Okay, especially when you're starting out. And I think just compare yourself to other professions. I know many young CEOs who are working weekends, Sundays, well into the nights, attorneys, and it comes down to the same thing, whether we cold calling or we're buying leads or we're just doing it however, which way works for us. There's a lot of hard work that goes into being successful, but I can guarantee that if you do stick at it, that you will be. All right, we've got a minute. Anyone else, any final comments?
I'll ask a question unrelated if there aren't any comments.
Sure.
How does everyone go about doing their business assurance? Do you do it yourself? Do you outsource it? Have you gone on any courses to upskill yourself? It's becoming more and more topical for me, and I'd like to get better at it.
You mean client's business assurance?
Yeah.
What do you mean? You mean the
buy
legal
and sell
side?
agreements? Yeah, like buy and sell agreements, key person. Let's just say upskilling yourself, or there are people that you can outsource to as an example. So what do you do in your own practice? Say you meet with a big business owner, they need advice around their
I think
assurance.
very often, as much as we can read up in all our textbooks. So if you're CFP, you know that you passed the exam. But very often, every situation is completely different because of ages of shareholders, family situations, how that shareholding is held in personal names and trusts in other businesses. But I mean, I think the bottom line is you need to be able to have that knowledge yourself. 90% of it, I think, either utilize one of the companies that you deal with, their legal advisors, so try and get close to one of those, or work with, or find an independent attorney that you work with. I wouldn't do it with an accountant because accountants are accountants. With respect, they're not attorneys, and I do believe many accountants do wills and those kind of agreements, but I honestly don't believe that's their first skill. You should probably work with an accounting and a legal team so that we both understand them. But accounting knows accounts, a lawyer knows lawyers. But I think you've got to upskill yourself, because you've got to be able to explain to a client in a way that it works, and also then understanding their personal setup. But yeah, it is tricky. Just remember, if something happens down the line, the buck's going to stop with you.
Yeah.
Okay. I've seen many cases the accountants disappeared or they put their hands up. It's going to stop with you because you're the person giving the advice at the end of the day.
Let's maybe ignore basic textbook training. I'm more curious to know if anyone's gone on some sort of specific course or seminar or whatever that's helped them a lot and made them very competent in that space and made them successful in that space. I'm curious about that.
Yeah, Errol Mayer.
So can I just say something, Dylan? So Errol Mayer, look, I started out in the industry specializing in business assurance, and I love it. I absolutely put me in front of a business owner. It's like my forte. But you've got to know the Estate Duty Act. You've got to know your acts like backwards. You should be able to like literally say, I remember Marius. What was Marius's name, Dirk? Who we studied with, who lectured us?
Buerta.
Who said that? So Marius Buerta, Brendan, yeah, I remember he said that, you've got to know if somebody's talking about section 4A or section 33D, A1, but yeah, you've got to know that backwards. And then not only the theory, you've got to be able to map that theory back to a practical situation with a client, and obviously you would know the Companies Act, et cetera. But Errol Mayer is doing a course from April this year. It's a 6-month course, just to let everybody know, through the University of Orange Free State, specifically on estate planning. Go onto his, so he is my go-to. And go onto his website. He's just released another updated estate planning book, and it's actually got estate planning case studies. So that's quite nice to learn from, because it's nice to have a case study and then the actual solution to it. But he is it's somebody that I really do value in my business. And then also, just from my business point of view, I market. So when I do business assurance or meet business clients, I work with their trustees, their lawyers, their attorneys, their auditors, and we work as a team together. But I also charge clients for that. So the fiduciary planning I do. The four of us work as a team together, and I basically pull everything together into the plan. So if you can get into that type of business, it's very lucrative. Oh my gosh, literally, like. Very lucrative.
I've known Errol my whole career. We started Sun and Half together, and he is definitely foremost in this, because when it comes to complications, it's not just the agreement, it's not just the cover in place. It's where the entities are held. It's capital gains tax implications. It's how the partners are married. It's their wills. How many of us have got wills drafted by attorneys that are simply incorrect because they don't have the Pensions Fund Act?
Yeah.
Okay. So we cannot take for granted that a lawyer knows the law. We get lawyers that do conveyancing, we got lawyers that do family law, we got lawyers that do company law. Even accountants, they will generally kind of have a view swayed on a part of their business. If you look at a client's portfolio of clients, very often their clients' businesses will be structured in a very similar way. I know guys in PE where everyone's in a trust if they were set up 25 years ago, and other, where that's different. So it doesn't mean it's wrong or right, but everyone has a bias in a certain way. And our job is to understand that and look at the whole picture and put it together. Because again, the buck stops with us. Even if there's not a policy involved, because you can do a buy and sell without including, cover. We're the ones giving advice, and they're going to come back to us. So I'll be very careful with that. But Errol Mayer is hands down. You'll get value for money. Yeah. Okay, guys, we've run over. Thanks so much. It's been a great session, and I'll put the recording on the group, and we'll see you next month.
Thanks, Dirk. Thanks, everyone. Have a great week.
Cheers, guys.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Dirk.
bye.
Thank you.
Guys.
Bye.
Cheers all.
Yeah.
Cheers, guys.